You've seen it. Maybe your own kid. Maybe your niece. Maybe some baby on a plane 3 rows up. They're not looking at you. They're not looking at a toy. They are just staring dead into a corner of the ceiling, completely locked in, like they are watching something you can't see. And it's a little unsettling, right? Because there's nothing there. You've checked. You've turned around, scanned the room, found absolutely nothing. And the baby is still staring, unblinking, at empty space like it's the most interesting thing in the universe. So what is actually happening inside that tiny skull? Is the baby broken? Is the baby seeing something? Or is there something deeper going on? Something that goes back way further than your living room? Back to a time when staring at nothing might have been one of the smartest things a human could do? Let's start with the boring answer first, because we have to rule it out. A newborn's vision is genuinely terrible. Blurry, low contrast, only able to focus clearly on things about 8 to 12 inches away, which not coincidentally is roughly the distance from a mother's breast to her face. So sometimes the blank stare really is just a baby whose eyes haven't figured out how to lock onto anything yet. But here's the thing. That explanation stops working after a few months. Babies who can clearly track a moving toy, who can clearly recognize their parent's face across a room, still do the 1,000-yard stare. Older babies, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, kids with perfectly functional vision, still zone out staring at a blank wall or an empty corner like they're watching a movie only they can see. So something else is going on, and it's actually one of the most fascinating things happening inside a developing brain. The real answer starts with a word you've probably never heard, gaze aversion. And the flip side of that, sustained blank staring, both fall under something researchers call disengagement. Basically, a baby's brain, especially in the first year, is being absolutely flooded with information. Every sound, every texture, every flickering shadow, every human face with its infinite tiny expressions, it's all pouring in at once, completely unfiltered, because a baby hasn't built the mental machinery yet to prioritize any of it. Imagine every notification on your phone going off at the exact same second, forever, with no way to silence any of them. That's roughly what raw sensory input feels like to a brain that hasn't learned to tune anything out. And staring at nothing, staring at a blank ceiling or an empty stretch of wall, is actually the baby hitting the mute button. It's not a malfunction. It's a coping mechanism. Neuroscientists studying infant attention have found that babies deliberately shift their gaze toward low-stimulation environments when they are overloaded. A blank wall has almost zero information in it. No moving parts, no faces, no sudden sounds, which makes it, from an overwhelmed baby's nervous system, one of the calmest places in the entire house. So when your baby stays into a corner instead of at you, it's often not ignoring you. It's actually recovering from you. Your face alone is an enormous amount of information for an infant brain to process. More movement, more detail, more emotional nuance than almost anything else they'll encounter that day. But there's a second layer to this, and it's the one that gets genuinely strange. Some of that staring isn't about tuning out the world. It's about tuning into something happening entirely inside the baby's own head. Around 4 to 6 months, infants start developing something researchers call default mode activity, patterns of brain function that also show up in adults during daydreaming, during mind-wandering, during the moments when you're staring at your ceiling at 2 a.m. thinking about absolutely nothing and everything at once. Babies appear to have early flickers of this same internal processing state, which means some of that blank stare might genuinely be the baby's brain running its own version of a background app, sorting through the day's flood of new faces, new sounds, new sensations, quietly filing it all away without any outside input needed. Here's where it gets even more interesting, and honestly a little humbling. For most of human evolutionary history, An infant's ability to disengage from overstimulation wasn't a cute quirk. It was survival software. Ancient human infants were carried constantly, pressed against a caregiver's body for the majority of their waking hours, surrounded by noise, movement, other children, animals, smoke from the fire, an endless stream of stimulation with absolutely no off switch. A baby with no ability to filter or disengage from that chaos would have been in a permanent state of distress, crying constantly, unable to sleep, unable to regulate. But a baby who could periodically shut the world out, who could stare into blank space and let an overloaded nervous system simply reset. That baby slept better, cried less, and grew a calmer, more resilient stress response. Over hundreds of thousands of years, that ability got baked directly into how infant brains develop. The 1,000-yard stare you're watching in your living room today is a survival tool your baby inherited from ancestors who needed a way to survive an environment that never, ever went quiet. And there's one more piece that most parents have never heard, something researchers call still face processing. When babies stare at something that isn't there, they're sometimes actually rehearsing. Studying videos of infant behavior, researchers have found that infants will sometimes fixate on empty space right after an intense social interaction, almost like they are replaying it internally, processing a facial expression or tone of voice they just experienced. It's not unlike how adults sometimes stare off after a strange conversation, mentally replaying it before moving on. Your baby's brain might be doing something remarkably similar, just without any of the language to describe it yet. So the next time you catch your baby locked onto an empty corner of the room, completely unbothered by anything you're doing to get their attention, you're not watching a glitch. You're watching one of the oldest pieces of survival architecture the human brain has ever built quietly doing its job. A brain deciding, on its own, without any instruction, that sometimes the smartest thing you can do with an overwhelming world is simply look away from all of it for a minute. Your baby isn't ignoring the universe. Your baby is learning how to survive it, one blank stare at a time.